Sure. So I do want to start by thanking you, Vera, and MCA for having me here to speak with everybody today. Um, I have been the manager of Common Good Capital for almost 9 years now. So I think what I'm going to talk about today is how our program can help co-ops capitalize their operations, and then also the benefits of our plans for investors. So I was just kind of curious, how are most folks here today like in more of a capacity as a representative of a co-op as opposed to like a prospective investor? It would be more from like the co-op side of things.
I think we have more from the co-op side of things,
Yeah.
including developers, co-op developers who are working.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of lean into that a little bit more. Um, so I'll just start with a brief overview of CWCF for anyone who's maybe not super familiar with us. Our organization was founded about 30 years ago here in Nova Scotia, where I am. And it's a corporation was essentially the outcome of meetings that were held by leaders of worker co-ops from across Canada who recognized that there was a need for a national organization that would represent their interests and allow them to have input at the national level. And they also saw the benefits of creating a network where worker co-ops could communicate more effectively amongst themselves. So CWCF was essentially born to fill those gaps and help worker co-ops here in Canada thrive. One of the steps that CWCF took to help embody its vision was developing a self-directed registered plans program. The term registered plans just refers to accounts that are registered with the CRA. And in our case, we offer our RSPs, which are registered retirement savings plans, and TFSAs, so tax-free savings accounts. Common Good Capital is actually a trade name we only came up with a few years ago. But we thought it kind of captured the intention and the spirit of what our program is and kind of how it sets us apart from maybe some of the banks out there or other fund companies. Um, so Common Good Capital, we have four staff members. Most of us are part-time to some capacity. We all work in Kentville, Nova Scotia, and we oversee the administration of the program under an agency agreement with Concentra Trust, who's also the trustee for a number of credit unions across the country. Um, our plans are all registered with the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency. And our program is essentially available to any member of CWCF as long as they have eligible securities, which I'll touch on in another minute. So the plans that we administer at Common Good Capital are self-directed, meaning the account holder, they're the person who determines which and what type of securities or investments they're going to hold. Our staff act solely on written instructions from investors. We can't provide investment guidance or financial advice. We do generally recommend that individuals speak with a financial advisor or a tax consultant if they have questions about their prospective investment. Um, and we're typically um, approached by a prospective program member. So, for example, like a new co-op that's about to launch their first offering, who goes through the process of joining CWCF as a member and then enrolling with Common Good Capital, which has a couple extra steps, so that then they can capitalize their initiative in part by accessing registered funds. But we also have been approached by individuals who have directly invested with a co-op or another type of enterprise, um, and their investments meet the criteria for our plans. So in those cases, they've approached the issuer, and if they were willing to go through the membership application process, then that investor and any other investors are then able to hold their securities with us and get the benefits from having a tax sheltered investment vehicle. which I'll talk a little bit more about as well. So we do tend to have investors who are they want the control over their investment decisions. Um, so as I mentioned, we offer two types of registered plans, our RSPs and TFSAs, and the investors will need to decide which type of those plans is right for them. Again, this might be something to discuss with a financial planner or advisor, depending on their individual situation. The primary benefit of the RSP, is that it's a tax deferred account. So investors will contribute to it with pre-tax dollars. Common Good Capital will issue a contribution receipt, again, just for RSPs, but that gets filed with income taxes and generally results in either a tax reduction or a refund. Um, the investment then grows in a tax sheltered account. It doesn't become taxable until it is withdrawn. And since that's generally during the retirement years and the person's income bracket is lower, then the taxes are generally lower as well. On the other hand, contributions to TFSAs are made with after-tax income, so the investors don't pay tax again when they withdraw from the plan. So essentially, their investment is able to grow tax-free and can be withdrawn at any time. Um, so having those options available for investors is just inherent value add for a co-op because it's um, giving those tax incentives that the larger corporations would already have access to. Um, and I talked earlier about being eligible um, for our program. So our membership was originally the program was created to help capitalize worker co-ops. Um, but we have expanded our membership over the years. So we now include a number of different types of organizations. They all have a similar structure and or have values that are similar to those of worker co-ops. Um, so we have a number of both specified and non-specified co-ops. We have right now three different types of community economic development companies. They have slightly different names in Nova Scotia, PEI, and New Brunswick, but each of the maritime provinces has a program in that CED sector. And then we also hold nonprofit organization securities as well now. Um, we have a number of renewable energy co-ops, opportunity development co-ops that have a specific objective. So, like the procurement of a space for like community housing. We have local investment funds that are created to support local businesses. So, one here in Nova Scotia provides really low interest loans to small businesses in farming and agriculture sectors. So, lots of socially responsible community-minded organizations in our membership. So those are the types of investments that people are able to make when they're enrolled in our program or have a plan with us. When we talk about eligibility aside from being a member of CWCF, which is a prerequisite, we're really referring to whether the co-op or the organization's securities, like shares or bonds, meet the CRA's definition of a qualified investment, just meaning that they're allowed to be held in a registered plan. And then we also need to ensure that they're not a prohibited investment, which is again another definition from the CRA, but basically it can come with significant tax penalties if they're held in a registered plan. So the way that these determinations are made is primarily based on two things. So how the organization is registered. So is it a specified cooperative corporation? Has it been certified as a CDIF here in Nova Scotia by the Securities Commission? So that's one. And then the second is what type of securities are being offered. So for example, a nonprofit organization offering community bonds. Um, and I'm happy to discuss eligibility in more detail during the Q&A or if anyone wants to reach out directly. But I'm not going to go any deeper than that for now. But that's generally what we're talking about is just that they're able to be held in an RSP or TFSA. Um, I have some program highlights here because there are a lot of features of our program that are worth highlighting. Some that are characteristic of registered plans themselves and others that are unique to us. So there's financial benefits for investors. One of the benefits of investing in a co-op through a registered plan is that they have the opportunity to use funds that are already in an RSP or a TFSA somewhere. So that money can be transferred into their account with us and then used to purchase shares in the eligible co-op. So that eliminates the need to come up with new money to make this investment. On the flip side of that, the benefit for the co-op is that if their securities are eligible to be held in a registered plan, they then have access to a whole pool of prospective capital in the form of money that's sitting in potential investors, RRSPs and TFSAs elsewhere that they may want to reinvest with a more community-minded organization. Um, Investors, though, that are looking to deposit new funds, if they do so into an RSP, they are going to get that tax deduction for their contribution. And I had mentioned before, if somebody comes to us and they already have that investment, if their shares are eligible, they can contribute the shares themselves to the plan and get all the same tax benefits. Um, it's also worth mentioning that our fantastic staff team is another asset to our program. So we are a very small group, which allows us to develop relationships with our members, and in lots of cases with clubs as well. And we have a lot more flexibility in a lot of areas than some of the bigger institutions. It's also worth noting that a lot of the larger financial institutions, they won't even hold these types of securities, not because they're not eligible, but just because of the level of administration and administrative work that goes into doing that. Um, Anything that's not publicly traded. So that's another one of the reasons that our program was established in the first place was to have an outlet and to have the opportunity to use those same vehicles that the larger publicly traded corporations would be using. Um, I feel like I'm at my time. I have a little bit more, but I don't see Philip here, so is that okay to?
By all means,
Okay.
keep going. And then I have a couple questions too before I turn off the
Sure.
recording, but I'll let you go first.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, if you want to interrupt anytime, go right ahead. Um, So again, just a little more about the program. We're committed to keeping our costs as low as possible for our members and our clients. We actually just this fall will be increasing our fees for the first time in 9 years. Um, but generally, and even now with the increases, investors are going to be paying lower fees for the same services that are provided by the larger financial institutions that offer self-directed plans. And we're very upfront about them. So all new members, like new co-ops that join us, and then the investors themselves receive a copy of our fee schedule. They know exactly what to expect. We mail out statements annually that reflect any fees that have been charged to their account, so nothing's hidden as like a percentage of a management. Like it's all right there. You know exactly what you're paying. Um, we are and when I say low, for co-ops, the administration fee for one investor's account is $55. So low. And we have done a lot of work. We're constantly trying to improve the program, and add that value to the services that we offer. So, over the past few years, we have finally become less reliant on paper. A lot of our um, forms can be completed and signed electronically. We can do electronic fund transfers. So all of that has made us more efficient, and also decreased our environmental footprint, which is something we we keep an eye on as well. We're also getting ready to launch a new online client portal. So that's going to give investors the opportunity to check their accounts anytime they want, access tax slips, get up to date if there's any information about the program or deadline, and then also communicate more efficiently with us. And then our developers also develop creating a similar portal for the issuers themselves. So like a co-op could go in and see all of their registered investments at a glance, and then that will make things like issuing share certificates and reconciling the records with ours a lot easier for them. So that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. We're very excited. Just a couple other things about the program itself. Um, we have about 70 active members. We have 65 and then five that have joined recently that are just kind of getting their offerings going. The program members are the security issuers. We have almost 2,800 accounts that we manage. Over 2,500 of those are RSPs. But we do have the TFSAs are definitely growing. And we're currently holding a little over about $65.2 million in assets that we're holding just for co-ops and CDIFs and nonprofits all across Canada. So the way that our program works is that our members actually act as subagents on our behalf. So they are the investor's primary point of contact. They have access to all our forms. They know all our procedures, and they can assist the investors with the paperwork that's required to open accounts or process, carry out transactions, and then we actually do all the processing. But operating this way is what's allowed us to keep to manage all of this, like 3,000 accounts on any given day with four staff members who work approximately like two full-time equivalent positions. Because then we're decreasing our expenses and again, like trying to keep our fees as low as possible for everyone. Um, so I'm gonna leave it at that. I had mentioned some of the entities in the Maritimes that are community economic development organizations, who then those investors are getting the added bonus of equity tax credits from their provinces, which I know Philip was planning to speak about, so I don't know. Um, we can maybe touch more on that after, but I will wrap it up there. And if anyone has any questions now that you want to include, that's great. Otherwise, we can wait till the end.
For sure. So thank you, Kristin. I didn't really know too much about the Common Good Capital program, and it seems quite in depth. A couple of questions that hopefully will help provide some clarity for folks listening. Um, so the members you said are the actual companies that or organizations that are being invested in, but
Yeah.
you also have a relationship with all the investors. Is that correct too? The individual clients, if you will?
Yeah, to a degree. So by having we generally have like a representative from each member is our primary point of contact for dealing with them. Um, And then for the most part, the investors work through the issuer because that's who they're investing with. That's the company that they're more familiar with. We do definitely hear from them about, withdrawals or specific questions about their account or estate situations. And especially local ones actually do like to drop into the office, but no, most of the communication is between us and the members themselves.
So it's not just worker co-ops that are eligible. You've said that. So I assume the main eligibility criteria would be a co-op that is able to issue some form of investment share.
Yeah.
So it has to be a co-op that is set up to do that. And then they have to go through whatever investment share sort of rigmarole happens in whatever jurisdiction they're in, right? Because
Yeah,
that's
so
outside of you.
yes, that part, it, that's where we're talking about eligibility, and it depends on the type of entity and the type of share. So, for example, the CDIFs in Nova Scotia primarily issue small business shares, but it's the fact that they are registered as a CDIF, that Nova Scotia has legislation that inherently makes those investments qualified for our RSPs. It's the same legislation that then refers to the equity tax credit and the benefits to the investor of investing in that local CEDIF. So CEDIF shares are through legislation already a qualified investment. So as long as we have the certificate from the province, that's essentially all that's needed. Some of the non-specified co-ops, for example, um, their securities might be eligible under a different part of the Income Tax Act, and that's where it will get a little bit more cumbersome and honestly expensive. They generally have to hire a lawyer and accountant to provide an opinion letter saying yes, they're eligible and this is why. Um, Once we've met that, then they're good to go. And they generally have an idea if it's a new co-op being established with this purpose, they're kind of keeping that in mind anyways. And if they're looking into this as an option, they're already kind of reviewing that within their own bylaws. So yeah, did that answer?
Yeah.
That
So,
was long.
so
Okay.
no, no, that's great. That's helpful. So I think that if a co-op is interested in pursuing capital outside of their traditional membership shares, their first steps would be to look at their provincial legislation to see if their co-op structure is allowed to first offer any kind of investment share. And then I'd probably say in the front end to chat with folks from your team to just sort of find out what would be involved to make sure that from the get-go they're setting it up so that they can make these investments registered products, if you will,
Yep.
for
Yep.
their investors, right? Because it does
Yep.
add an added bonus to the investors who
Yes.
can then, as you said, there's some tax deferral stuff that can
Mhm.
happen and things like that, and
Mhm.
deductions on personal income taxes and whatnot. So that's
Yep.
helpful. So the first steps would be find out if you can sell investment shares within your share structure, your co-op structure, and then the next step would be to contact you guys to find
Yeah.
out more.
Yeah, and they obviously while they're finding that out, presumably they're speaking with a tax lawyer, accountant who's familiar with this, and we do have at least one worker co-op member who the worker co-op shares are not eligible, but they set up a separate but associated co-op, who then is registered as a CDIV, and those are eligible, and those are eligible eh, for multiple offerings, and it's just a different structure. So just because the co-op itself isn't, they might be able to kind of find a way around by creating a separate co-op, I guess. And again, it depends. I know Manitoba has some CED options too, so that could factor in there too.
Great. Thank you, Kristen.